everyone, Zizaran here with a weapon crafting guide for the upcoming league. There's going to be a lot of people playing melee in Legion, so I figured I'd make a guide on how to create pretty much everything, ranging from early game weapons, mid game, to the end game weapons that you've seen me creating on stream. And we'll take you through it specifically using axes as examples, but this will work for everything. So if you're a mace, sword, claw, doesn't really matter. We're going to give examples for everything here. For the super early game, there's a really nice recipe where you just use a rustic sash in either blue or rare. It's better if it's rare, it'll give you higher damage. Then you use any weapon. The rarity doesn't matter as long as it's not unique. And a whetstone. Now, with the rare one, this will give you up to 56% Phys damage. So it's a really, really great recipe for early game. Then you can throw an orb of augmentation on it. Hope you get attack speed. Most of the time, you're not going to bother regaling this at an early level because you're not going to have regals. As long as you keep your weapon base up to date with what's currently dropping, like you'll be getting different axe bases with higher required level as you're leveling, you should be getting decent enough damage, especially with all the melee changes, that for a long time, at least until like your 40s, 50s, these should be fine without even hitting something that is like nicer. Another example is you might find weapons like this, right? This has got attack speed, it has flat fizz on it, and throughout the game you will find different recipes that you can use. So for example, you can put on physical damage on this one. And both at level 16 and 32, it's pretty early ones that only require alterations. Now this is obviously going to give it, like, in this case, nearly a double damage boost. As for which bases to use, I prefer using the high attack speed ones. If something's at 1.5 or 1.4 attack speed, it's going to scale a lot better with anything like flat physical, flat elemental damage, stuff like that added to attacks. And it'll feel nicer to play in general than being locked behind slow ones. And I'm generally using one-handers in these examples, but two-handers are going to be really strong in the new league as well. Essences can be really good as well. As soon as you start finding essences, like even early on, like a weeping, all you really need is that Phys damage, and then crafting on the other Phys damage here is going to be like, that's going to be a great weapon for a couple of tiers. If you hit something already, like if you hit Phys and you have Phys on it, so like both the flat and percentage, that's already going to be a great weapon. And then you have the option of either crafting something like attack speed. So that is the essence of Contempt, that adds flat Phys. You can also do that for crafting jewelry, which can be really nice, so on rings or amulets. And obviously the higher up in tier, the more flat Phys it has. Another option as well is to use an essence of Seal. This guarantees attack speed, and I normally try to save these for boots, but they're definitely great to use on weapons as well. If I use this here and if I hit percentage Phys on top of something, then being able to craft either the flat or whatever is missing, you have a really great high attack speed weapon. So I can give some quick examples here with some contempts. And luckily, streamer RNG, luckily we hit a really great one here. So this is an open suffix. So if I was leveling with melee at the start of the league, all I would do now is I would craft a low level attack speed, and this is a great weapon for the start of the league. Now, in the background, there's some footage of me crafting with jagged fossils, and that is actually one of the best ways to craft. Jagged fossils are very easy to self-farm, and they're usually very cheap. They'll probably go up in price this league, but there will be a lot of people farming delves, but acquiring them isn't really the important part here. The important part is how do you craft a weapon. And like I said, spamming jagged fossils is really, really cost efficient. Easy to get, one socket resonators, and the jaggeds themselves are, like I've said, so easy to get. Now, we can't really predict exactly what the price of jaggeds are going to be. Normally, there's something like 0.5 or 1C each, but then again, melee hasn't been very popular either. So I want to talk a little bit about the different ones. Now, if you open up PoE DB and check the different tier rules of For example, percentage physical damage. You can see that you unlock Tyrannical at item level 73. That means that if you hold Alt down with the advanced option, it'll tell you the item level. If that is 73, that means that you can roll Tyrannical. It's a very low chance. It's very rare. I would say from personal experience, it's something like 1,500 to 2,000 alts, thereabouts, to roll Tyrannical. Merciless can be over 3,000 alts, and it requires item level 83. Item level 83 is the ideal base level that you want, but early game you're not going to get that. I recommend trying to get at least 73 for Tyrannical. And for the flaring one, if you can get to item level 77, which is tier 10 maps, that gives you the highest tier of flat physical damage. So obviously the higher up you can get, the better. There's nothing really worth getting past 83. As far as I can tell, that gives you a disadvantage because there are other mods you can roll that aren't really related to your damage. So once we have a little bit more knowledge about what kind of rolls we can get, well, now we can start doing alteration crafting. And every time I'm doing this, people keep asking me, what are you looking for and where are you looking at? Well, I'm normally looking not at the name of the item where it says Tyrannical and stuff like that. I'm looking at the actual stat itself. And normally, it depends a little bit how early into the league you are. Early on, when you have like 20 to 40 ult and you're just trying to get any good weapon, you could definitely get away with something like Bloodthirsty or Cruel on a weapon. Later on, you definitely want to go for more than that. If I'm trying to craft an endgame weapon, I'm usually looking for Tyrannical. However, there are some really nice things that can happen. So one example is a prefix that's always going to be your either hybrid percentage Phys, which is tiers such as, for example, emperors, dictators, and conquerors and stuff like that. Now, these are currently extremely strong in this game because if you hit one of these and you reroll either a good suffix or another good prefix, you can instantly multi-mod the item. This costs you 2 exalts, but if you have one of these high tiers, you can get a really high damage weapon with just that. Now, I would normally only multi-mod it on at least an Emperor's Plus, ideally a Dictator's. So there's a couple of things you can do here. If you get something like Emperors and Dictators on its own, I would definitely, and it's on a good base, like for example a Siege Axe, a Valax, or a Flesh Ripper if you want to go crit, make sure you don't augment this, because you would want to ideally have one stat and then multi-mod everything else. Now you can guarantee that this goes well by using the Krakic Chimeral Bestiary recipe. And how this works is it creates an imprint of a blue item. So an example would be, say that I hit the really rare hybrid mod Dictators on a Siege Axe, and there is no suffix, right? If you were really going for a mirror tiered item, you could technically augment this and hope for something like tier 1 attack speed. However, you're most likely not going to hit that. So what I do is I create an imprint of this blue Dictators on its own, and then I go and regal it. Now, best case scenario, this hits something great, right? You hit the attack speed or you hit really high percentage Phys and you're already really happy. Now, worst case scenario, you hit something like resists and you're like, great, thanks, fantastic, don't need that. So now you're going to use an Orb of Annulment. Best case scenario, you hit the resist, so you remove that from the item. Now you're sitting with a rare item with Dictators on its own. Worst case scenario, you remove the Dictators and then you have to go back to your imprint. It works as a save game of your item, only works on blue items, but you can recall it back to that blue base that you had earlier and then do that over again until you hit it. So early on, if you do get something with Emperors or Dictators on it, even if you can't afford multi-modding it right now, maybe save it for later and save up those 2 Exalted Orbs, because the Dictators in particular is very rare. Now, there's lots of times in either you're playing solo self-found or you're just not rich, and then you're going to want to look out for things like Cruel, Tyrannical, and Merciless. Now, one good outcome is you could get something like Cruel or Tyrannical or Merciless with attack speed. Now, this especially with Merciless and attack speed, you're already thinking about imprinting this. Because with the imprint, like we just explained, you can get multiple tries at either wriggling or multiple tries at wriggling and annulling, depending on how much money you want to invest and depending on what your target outcome is. If you do hit something like Cruel, Tyrannical, and Merciless and then wriggle something okay, you have a lot of good options for getting some great weapons just by crafting something like either Flat Fist or attack speed, depending on what's missing. If something like alterations are around 6 to 7 alts per and jagged fossils end up being like 4 or 5C each, then chaos spamming isn't actually as bad as it seems. Normally I'm very against chaos spamming, and the only thing that I chaos spam on the regular would be something like Searching Eye, Abyssal Jewels. Had so much luck with that, and it just generally is pretty great. But if they do end up being that expensive and that's the sort of prices we're looking at in Legion, then it's worth thinking about. As for bases, so in Path of Exile we have Elder bases, and for Swords and Claws they're actually not that exciting, but for Axes they actually are, because they add a percentage suffix that you can only get on the Elder bases, and that's part and that's part of why Axes are so strong, and they're really hard to beat even in Synthesis, because you would have to get basically perfect implicit and then craft a really good axe. Whereas with the Elder ones, we've had that for a while now, and you just need to hit that one suffix. So obviously that's not particularly common either, but it is very strong, and it also adds culling. So if you're not a Slayer, that's a really nice damage bump. Something worth talking about now as well is the new two-hander mods on Elder, like things like Fortify, Onslaught. Fortify is definitely the #1 thing you want to look at. So the level 20 supported by Fortify one, it gives you 127 to 134% damage. Now this is only similar to around Bloodthirsty, and it's not particularly great damage wise. However, Fortify is a more multiplier now, so you're getting like 30 or 35% more multiplier built into your axe, and that can be really strong. Even if you like realistically have a low axe, but if you get something like 600-700 damage with Fortify, that can beat a much higher axe that doesn't have it, because you're getting a free more multiplier. Looking out for those Elder mods like the Elder suffix and the supported by prefixes can be really good. There's no real advantage to using the Shaper ones, at least for axes. So this covers a lot of information about Phys axes and weapons. I'm generally pretty happy to give crafting advice as long as it doesn't get too much. If you do have any questions, drop by my stream at twitch.tv/Zizaran. Thanks for watching, and try to die less than I do.